What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to another Fantasy Football Scout video with me, Lee, and this is Sam from FPL Family. Now, it wouldn't have escaped your notice that we have two quite important double game weeks. Are we calling them mini double game weeks or double game week lights? I don't know what you call them. They're not like the usual fiesta of football that a double game week might be in, say, a 26. But 24 and 25 will give us enough food for thought, won't it?
Yeah, it's definitely a conversation, isn't it, about what you do with your teams at this point. Do you go all out for those 4 clubs, as it is in game week 24, 2 clubs as it is in game week 25? Are you a bit more restrained about it? How many doublers are necessary, I guess, is a big conversation for the FPL community to have.
Because there's actually some single game weekers, Mr. Bruno Fernandes in particular, that have very good single game week fixtures. But nevertheless, that's a whole nother video. This video is all about the 4 teams that have got the doubles and some players that we ought to be looking at that are on our radars in those teams. So let's start, Sam, with Everton. So Everton, bouncing back a bit recently, found a bit of form, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin in particular has found some form. Anybody, I mean, he's obviously catching your eye, I guess, 2 home games, and then there's a away game to Liverpool in game week 25, which right now shouldn't hold any fear, I would suggest, if you're an Everton fan. And then Southampton at home, followed by a tricky-looking away tie at Chelsea. So actually, the next 4 games there for Everton look like there could be points. Although that Man City game, does that put you off a little bit in the double? Or is the Fulham game at home enough to entice you into the toffees?
It is for me, yeah. I think we saw enough character in Everton in game week 23. And as you say, they've shown a bit of bounce back in the last couple of results that they've had. That it makes me kind of more interested, I guess, in their assets. And I think that there's been a rejuvenation in Everton since their creative or more creative players have returned from injuries or suspensions wherever they've been.
Well, interesting you say that, because James Rodriguez is a bit in and out of the team right now, isn't he? He kind of returned and then he's sort of rested, or, they're trying to... Feels like they're kind of managing him a little bit. What's the latest with him? Is he available?
Yeah, so Carlo Ancelotti came out on Tuesday morning and said we have to wait until training, that we have Tuesday afternoon to check some situations. One is James Rodriguez, the other one is Jordan Pickford. So, of course, there are 2 quite important players within that Everton lineup, whatever you think of Jordan Pickford and his occasional mistakes.
Yeah, Olsen ain't that much better. He's not inspiring confidence for me, Olsen.
No, and so I think, they are quite pivotal players. Now, obviously, Everton have a game against Spurs in the FA Cup, so we will get more of an insight into who is fit and who is available, either during that game or you would expect in the post-match interviews after that game, when they're bound to be asked about players that were missing, I suppose. And I also think that then leads into another conversation about whether we might see more of Everton in game week 26. Depends, obviously, what happens in the round of the FA Cup. But yeah, for me, they're definitely ones I'm interested in. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I think, is going to be a very popular pick. And for me, he is right up there with the captain conversation.
Already in your team, isn't he, DCL?
Already in my team, yeah.
Benched him last week?
Yeah.
Same as me? Same as a lot of people?
Yeah. Mistakes.
Yeah.
Mistakes happen. I won't bench him in the double game week, of course.
You've got the right player on your team. It's fine. Go on.
Yeah, he came in at the right moment, I think, because he came in for a couple of good results for them. Just a shame not to have got the big haul that he got in game week 23. But yeah, for me, he is up there with the captaincy conversation. That game against Fulham, although Fulham have been a lot better, they aren't still that solid defensively. And I know they had a good result at the weekend, but nonetheless, I think that there is definitely scope there for players like Calvert-Lewin, particularly if James Rodriguez is available, to get in there and there behind. But another one I think is worth talking about is Luca Digne at the back. I think he's got potential to be a nice differential pick as well going into this week.
Okay, he's 6.1, Luca Digne. So on any other given game week, I guess we might look at him and say, ooh, maybe a bit expensive for our taste. But we're coming up to a double game week, of course, and at a time when a lot of us FPL managers have got, frankly, a bit of cash burning a hole in our pocket. Certainly I have. So I am looking at Luca Digne. He missed, more or less a third of the season, yet he's second for assists amongst defenders. So that just shows you that when he's in the team, obviously Dominic Calvert-Lewin benefits, and DCL is there to put away those assists. So Luca Digne, I like the look of, I must admit. I've got Andy Robertson in my team right now through, I don't know, blind faith possibly that he's still in my team. I don't know. I expect him to come good at some stage. It just hasn't happened. But a Robertson to Digne transfer looks absolutely on for me. Are you looking at Luca Digne or anybody else at the back for that matter?
Yeah, he's definitely up there. I think the question mark I have is, Would I bring him in? If this was a single game week just against Fulham, would I bring him in? The answer probably is yes. And if that's the case, then it's probably a transfer that's worth doing because, yes, the game against Manchester City is hard. There is no doubt about that.
No doubt.
And yes, there is unlikely to be a clean sheet in that game against Manchester City, but there could easily be a clean sheet against Fulham. And there could easily be some attacking returns for him. He has set pieces and stuff in his locker as well. So even if he just returns 2 points on the back of that Man City game, 2 plus whatever he potentially could get in the Fulham game, for me makes it worth it.
Yeah, and then a trip to Anfield, which, as I mentioned before, won't hold much fear for anybody going there right now. Then Southampton at home, another fixture where you'd expect Digne to do pretty well in terms of set pieces. Chelsea away obviously gets a bit more difficult from then on, but Luca Digne could be not just a reasonable pick for the double game week, but all right going forward as well. So plenty to choose from the Goodison Park faithful. We'll talk about captaincy at the end, because I know you've got your eye on DCL. I'll talk about captaincy at the end. But let's move to another team. Let's move to Fulham now. So their double game week is Everton away, Burnley away. So 2 tricky fixtures for Fulham before a really nice looking tie against Sheffield United at home in 25, then Palace, and then they go to Anfield on game week 27. So actually 25 and 26 look all right for Fulham. But does that double game week of Everton away, Burnley away, are you enticed by Fulham and the Cottagers, or is this are they too difficult? I mean, they are 2 difficult fixtures, right?
They are 2 difficult fixtures, but so was West Ham in game week 23.
Sure, yeah.
And I was actually really impressed by Fulham in game week 23. They improved quite significantly a few weeks ago. There's been a little bit of a dip in their defensive qualities over the last couple of weeks, but really showed up against West Ham in game week 23 at a time where...
Did they show up or did West Ham just not show up? I don't know.
I think it was a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that there were a lot of us that were... I was watching that game mostly for my investment in West Ham. But I think for me, the impression I got from it was that I was impressed by Fulham. I was particularly impressed with Lookman. I thought he was really influential, didn't have a lot in the way of finishing quality, and I think that's something that Fulham have been lacking a bit this season.
No return since game week 19 for Lookman, although he is 5.0, so if you're in the market for somebody of that sort of price,
and I think you're
not going to get too much better in that bracket.
No, and I think he might have been popular pick had the Souček red card stood its time. I think
violent conduct from Souček, the
contact.
massive elbow that absolutely decked Mitrovic.
Had he been suspended, I think we might have seen a bit of a movement onto some of these slightly cheaper options at other clubs.
But we're not looking at cheap options, are we? Like I say, we've all got money in the bank, so who needs a Lookman?
Money, that's Kane money, Lee.
Geez, okay,
I think for me, so I think Lookman was one that I was impressed with. Not so impressed with his finishing, but
creativity
was there. And I think, yes, they are difficult fixtures. Yes, I'm not expecting there to be a lot of joy, but then Everton do have a tendency to concede. We've seen that over recent weeks. Okay. So there's maybe scope there. Burnley have been a lot more solid defensively, so that one I wouldn't necessarily expect a lot. But Lookman is definitely up there, as is Loftus-Cheek for me, who again was another one that really impressed me in game week 23.
Sure, he's impressing me too, but he's not really raking in the FPL points. I think we're clutching at straws a bit there.
But I don't think you could categorically say that anybody is. More people are going to have the goalkeeper. I think going into this week there'll be a number of people, because he's nice and cheap, that will have had him as a second goalkeeper option on the bench, and obviously can play this week, and save points, bonus points, they can all add up. Would I do that transfer for a long-term pick? Absolutely not. But could you bring in the likes of Loftus-Cheek or Lookman as a bit of a cheap 5th midfielder pick? Yeah. Yes, I think you could.
They feel like differential punts to me on the whole. Maybe you'd have a look at Decordova-Reid, like you say, Loftus-Cheek, etc. But for me, Everton away, Burnley away, that's not really enticing. If I had them, I think I'd stick.
Yes.
But I don't think I'm going to be spending my budget on Fulham, I'm afraid. But here's a team where we might be. So Burnley's double game week in 24 is Crystal Palace away, followed by obviously that home game against Fulham. Now we've seen what Burnley are like, not just this season, since the return of me and a couple of other big players at the back there, but in previous seasons, obviously defensively very, very sound. Now, I don't think too many FPL managers will be flocking to their forward line. We'll talk about that in just a second. But who's catching your eye from the Burnley rearguard in particular? Because I think Crystal Palace and Fulham looks like 2 games where they can absolutely keep back-to-back clean sheets.
Yeah, Crystal Palace yet to score without Zaha. And obviously Zaha
such a big
out
miss
injured.
For them, isn't he?
So I think for me that is quite a big deal. I brought in Nick Pope as my transfer for game week 23.
He's going to be popular, yeah.
And I think he will be popular second in terms of highest point scoring keepers right now, only behind the outstanding
The
Martinez
legend. Yeah.
at Aston Villa. So I think Pope will be an incredibly popular pick for this week.
He's got the opportunity to overtake Martinez, though. Look at that. Palace, Fulham, and then West Brom at home in 25. There's 3 clean sheets, is it not, for Nick Pope?
Should be. It should be.
Yeah.
You know, you look at those fixtures, and I think, you know, particularly these 2 in double game week 24, that there should be scope there for Nick Pope to return back-to-back clean sheets. So we should be looking at least 12 points from him. Plus, you know, Burnley never get involved in very high scoring games, not usually, and so therefore it's normally the defence that pick up the bonus points, and there's obviously clean sheet save points that you can get from Nick Pope as well. So the potential for him to overachieve, I think, is potentially greater actually than the forward players at Burnley. I think there will be a number of people that are on Nick Pope, but I think there is definitely scope this time around to defensively double up on Burnley. You know, you've got the likes of, as you mentioned already, Ben Mee, Lowton looks good as well. I think the one I'd be slightly wary of is Peters, because Charlie Taylor is on the cusp of a return, so he's one maybe to watch. But if you're looking to invest in 2 at the back, then, you know, looking at one of the defenders alongside Pope,
Lowton looks pretty safe.
Look
Tarkovsky,
okay.
if you've got, again, that money, burning a hole in your pocket, bit of goal threat from him. Although Ben Mee has shown recently that he can get in amongst it, right? Yes. So for me, I think I'll be going with Pope. I think he ranked 2nd for saves inside the box so far this season, which of course, as you rightly mentioned, in those low-scoring games which Burnley tend to be a part of, he gets those, you know, the pass completion rates, the save points. Yeah. So with that comes a bonus point or 2. So not only would you be looking at maybe a couple of 6s there for Pope, I'd actually have my fingers crossed for maybe a couple of 8s. Or, you know,
you said it now.
I said it now.
Stop jinxing our keeper.
But if Crystal Palace at home, Crystal Palace away, Fulham home, could lead to, I don't know, a 13, 14 points for Nick Pope, I'd be very, very happy with that, and I'll take it. And of course, I'll play him in game week 25 for West Brom at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
even with McCarthy, by the way, because McCarthy's my other keeper, and he'll double in game week 25. But I fancy Pope at home to West Brom.
Oh, interesting. I think the other thing to say about Burnley, of course, is that Chris Wood is likely to, still flagged, probably not going to be available for those games. Therefore, if you want to invest in the attack, then it's probably Ashley Barnes that you're going to be looking at. But I think there are a number of other forward options in the game at the moment. The likes of, as we've already talked about, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but also some of the single game week players, the likes of Ollie Watkins, who are performing incredibly well right now. And I'm not sure you'd want to take those players out to invest in the Burnley attack. I think you're best off and you're safest with Burnley to go with the defence.
I think you're right. Turf Moor is a happy place, no doubt about it, but for clean sheets, I think, not for goals, not necessarily for goals. Let's move on from Burnley then and talk about the team that we all seem to be tripling up on, but you are not, Sam. Currently on 2 Manchester City players. So their double game week is Spurs at home, Everton away. 2 tricky-looking fixtures, followed by Arsenal away, and then West Ham at home in 26, followed by the Manchester Derby in 27. Now, no real fixture holds any fear for Pep's boys right now in terms of the way that they're playing, the form that they're in, and in particular the likes of Gundogan and Cancelo. Even Sterling and Jesus getting amongst the goals more recently.
Yeah.
You've got 2 of them so far. Surely you're thinking of a 3rd ahead of this double game week 24. And if you are, who are you thinking?
I'm not.
You're not. So you're going to go with the double. Right now you've got Gundogan and Diaz in your team, as far as I'm aware. You don't want to add to that.
It's not that I don't want to. It's that Manchester City are about, when they play their FA Cup game this week, they're about to embark on a 14-day period where they play 5 times.
A lot of games coming.
Yeah, so they've got the Premier League, they've got the restart of the Champions League, and also, obviously, the FA Cup. Now, for me, that throws up massive Pep roulette sirens that go off in my mind, because we'll get some insight, of course, in the FA Cup this week as to who is likely to play in these 2 Premier League games. But I am fairly sure that we will see huge rotation between the Spurs game at the weekend and the Everton game in midweek next week. You cannot read Pep's mind. I wish I could a lot of the time.
Isn't there a Champions League game against Borussia Mönchengladbach in there as well, isn't there? I mean, they've got so many games to play, City.
Yeah, 5 games, 14 days, very little in the way of rest. Very little in the way of recuperation time, and they have a squad that they don't need to risk.
Yeah.
And so you look at that midfield. Gundogan and Diaz and Ederson in goal, I think are the safe.
Probably
they're
okay.
the safe three. That spine down the middle. They will probably play all the games unless there's an injury or a reason why I might miss one or two here or there. But I would expect the core of the team to be there. But then you look around the periphery. We've seen him rotate Cancelo before, that happens. We've seen him rotate John Stones before, that happens. We've got Laporte coming back. We've seen him bench Kyle Walker before. You can never call who he's going to play out of Bernardo, Phil Foden and Mahrez. We sometimes see Sterling up top. We sometimes see Torres up top. We sometimes see Jesus up top.
Okay.
The rotation risk for me is so great. I'm looking at the two fixtures. Now, if those two fixtures were West Brom and I don't know, whoever, then somebody else at the bottom of the league, then I'd risk it. Because in one game against those sides, you could get a haul out of that player. Against Everton and Spurs, I wouldn't bring in a player to play against against Everton or Spurs.
Okay.
I wouldn't. So in that instance, just because they play them twice, they may not play them twice. And that's where my risk factor lies.
All right, well, there's the case for not having three, guys. I'm going to make the case for having three. It's Man City. You've got to have three. If you want to play the pet roulette, play it. Get a ticket. Get 3 tickets. And just look forward to the points coming in, guys. I totally get what you're saying. They might not play both games. But they might play both games.
They might.
And if Gundogan plays both games, he'll be in amongst it. We've seen how aggressive he's being in terms of his attacking ability right now. Getting into that box without even a concern for defending right now. That bursting into the box, not even in a very Kevin De Bruyne way, in a very Frank Lampard way. I've noticed that. I think he's really bombing in. And of course, if you've got Diaz, if you've got Cancelo, stick with them, right? I mean, absolutely, you've got to be playing these guys. Cancelo, we've said on numerous videos before and on our FPL Family live streams about this guy and his heat maps and where he plays. Basically playing as a central midfielder, but from right back or left back. He's absolutely insane in terms of his underlying stats. The one I would be slightly concerned about, I guess, is John Stones. I think with Laporte back on that left side of centre half, could we see some rotation there? Now, we've seen him play Stones and then put Laporte at left back, of course, because he seems to fancy Laporte there as much as he does a Mendy or a Zinchenko or anybody else. But even Zinchenko's had a couple of starts recently and he trusted him in what I think Pep would say is probably his hardest game of the season. The one he fears the most is going to Anfield, and he's put Zinchenko in there and he's trusted John Stones. So that tells you a lot about Pep and I think his first 11, or what he considers to be his first 11. So I hear you, but they are the team on form. I think they're going to walk the league from here on in. No one's going to get near them, and in a double game week, I think you have to have 3. Arsenal away after that, West Ham at home, and then Manchester United at home. So some reasonable looking fixtures.
They've not won against Spurs in 3 in the Premier League.
It's the Spurs game that's putting you off, isn't it? I can see it.
Well, it's Everton as well, because Everton are on. They've bounced back. I don't see Everton not scoring. I just don't. Spurs, the last 2 games in the Premier League, Spurs have won 2-0. The game before that, it was a 2-2 draw. I don't see Spurs not scoring now Harry Kane is back. So why am I investing in the defence? Well, okay, I hear what you're saying about Cancelo and the potential upside. There is no denying that is the case. But do I need 2 of them? I've got Diaz already.
Okay.
Do I want to bring in another one? I think I'd rather use my transfer for somebody else.
All right, well, there we go, guys. Get in the comments below. Let us know. Are you on Team Sam or Team Lee here with the Man City assets? Are you going with 3? Or are you going with 2? And who are you going to go with? Who is your key Man City picks? But who's your differential? So who's the Man City differential? You fancy a Phil Foden still a differential?
Played really well against Liverpool.
Mahrez gets it. Foden was sensational at Anfield, wasn't he?
Probably get benched though now.
Normally
happens.
Could happen, but if Mahrez gets a couple of games, who knows? So listen, Sam, just before we go, captaincy then for double game week 24. Who are you thinking?
I think if I go Man City, which fear might get me to go Man City because everyone's going to.
You've just said you can't place your bets on City because they're going to get rotated,
no,
so you can't put your captaincy there.
Well, no, and that's why I don't think I'm going to. But if fear gets me at the death because everyone else is, then I'll go Gundogan because I think he's the safest option. With potential upside, of course, because he has been really, really good over the last few weeks. At the moment, my captain's armband's with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, mostly because of that Fulham game, but the potential for another couple or an assist or even a goal against Manchester City, I think is there, and therefore the potential for him to do really well I think I'm going to trust him with it.
Yeah,
What about you?
okay.
Are you going to go with the double game weeker? Because earlier
Well-
you suggested you might just ignore the double game weekers for captaincy.
Well, do you know what? I as much as I am here championing the 3 City, I'm with you. You know, if you put your armband on a Cancelo or a Gundogan and then they miss a game, it's like, well, would you have captained them for either a single against Spurs or a single against Everton? You probably wouldn't, to
Probably
be honest.
not Cancelo. You might Gundogan.
Maybe. But either way, there's some doubt, isn't there?
There definitely is.
Dominic Calvert-Lewin, yes, absolutely. But my fear is that it's the Fulham game plus 2 points because I think City are so good at the back. And I'm going into the double game week with 2 City defenders. So that shows you that I have some faith in the City defence as well. So there's some uncertainty there. Would you necessarily captain Calvert-Lewin for a single game week against Fulham? Well, you might, but there's some doubt. You might not also. However, would you captain, if this wasn't a double game week, the captaincy would be on Bruno Fernandes without a shadow of a doubt. Manchester United playing West Bromwich Albion, he would be captaincy by pretty much everybody that owns him. So
we had this last time Bruno had an everyone's going to
I
captain
know,
him, though.
and despite the double game week, guys, I haven't made this decision yet, but I am considering just going for the single on Bruno because I think he could do as much damage in that one game as Calvert-Lewin could do in his 2, or the City players could do in their 2. But listen, it's going to be an open game week, I think.
Never forget the single game because I think that's one thing that I will say is that it's always the case. Every time there's a double game week, there are always single game weekers who pop up with a higher points total.
Yeah, it's
than your double
Bruno
game
away at
weekers
West
do.
Brom. Oh, come on, you'd be captaining him every other game week. Anyway, listen, guys, thank you for joining us here on the Fantasy Football Scout YouTube channel. If you enjoyed the video, hopefully you did, hit that like button. Really helps us with the YouTube algorithms and helps get the message out to a lot of the other FPL managers out. And then if you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button before you go and the little notify bell so you know whenever our videos are made available on the channel. Good luck in double game week 24. Get those 3 Man City assets in. Gotta happen. Green arrows, and see you this time next week. Cheers.
Bye, guys.